What's going, poppers? Welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story when the credits begin to roll. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the movie Beau is Afraid. Following the sudden death of his mother, a mild-mannered but anxiety-ridden man confronts his darkest fears as he embarks on an epic, Kafka-esque odyssey back home. This movie is rated R for strong violent content, sexual content, graphic nudity, drug use, and language. This movie is currently in theaters as of the time of recording this on May 2nd. So, definitely go check it out if you want. As always, massive spoilers ahead. We are definitely going to assume that you have seen this movie.
100%.
We recorded this, we did a 30-minute, maybe 20-minute, round one where I was describing the movie and realized that wasn't going to work. So because this movie is just massive, it's just a massive movie.
Our movie.
we are assuming that you have seen this movie. And with that being said, Marquise, why don't you go ahead and give everyone a brief synopsis, a much shorter version of what I was trying to do in the unaired attempt.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very brief synopsis. First of all, just for y'all that don't know, Kafka-esque, basically nightmarish when we said that in the description. So it's a nightmarish odyssey back home for this anxiety-ridden man. This movie was written and directed by Ari Aster, who famously made Hereditary and Midsommar, which if you've listened to this podcast, you already know Midsommar is my favorite movie. And so, this is a 3-hour nightmare comedy, which means comedy, drama, and horror kind of all rolled in one.
Right.
And I would say kind of almost equally all aspects, if I'm being honest. It kind of feels like it's among all of them. But yeah, kind of like Andy already said. So this follows a man just kind of riddled with anxiety as he's supposed to go home to visit his mother. And then there's just problems along the way from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There's just issues. And as the movie goes on, it's kind of revealed more and more issues that this man has with his mother, and that he has just kind of in general, trying to survive or get along. It just seems like he's just a very kind of troubled man. And it starts with, him just going to try to get to his mom's for the weekend or whatever. And then it's just along the way, so many things happen. So many
he gets hit by
people,
a van and everything.
So many different people he encounters, all the way to the end where he finally gets home to his mother's home, which we'll talk about more about that when we get to the end of this. So that's basically just a quick synopsis. It's this anxiety-riddled man is trying to make it back home to visit his mom because she wants to see him. And there's just a lot of problems on the way. And those problems reveal a lot about this character whose name is Beau, because Beau is afraid.
He is a very afraid man.
Andy, can you tell me what you thought of this movie, dog? Because first watch, I need to know because I want to.
Okay. So for context, I have seen this movie twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it the first time I went to go see it with Susan. And when the movie ended, my immediate reaction, I'm saying credits rolling, was the most I loved, and I still loved it on the second ending, but I loved that last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
When with that scene.
Yeah.
I was very confused with how I felt. I had very mixed emotions after the movie was over. I was not sure if I liked it. Mm-hmm. I really had to. I think this movie really makes you sit and reflect on those feelings. And if you already make a decision, I think you don't do yourself justice nor the film justice if you determine right then and there if you don't like the movie. Mm-hmm. Because this movie covers a lot of really deep issues for this one particular man, but I think that in a way that some people might be able to find part bits and pieces where they can relate to it. And I think that if you right off the bat say that you don't like this movie, I think that, you know, you are entitled to do so. I just don't think that you're not doing yourself a service. I think the longer I sat and reflected on the movie, the more I actually enjoyed the movie. And this was a movie that like I actually like vividly remembered things, whereas like other confusing movies that we've done, like Tenet, I like completely forgot details for. But this one, like the more I reflected, the more I remembered details and the more I was able to put pieces together. And I think after my initial watch, after giving myself like honestly like 2 days, I was able to really like appreciate the movie. I saw it a second time. This time, Susan hated it. Susan hated the movie. She did not want to see it a second time. She saw it once. And that's fair. That's fair.
We should have brought Susan on the episode.
I know. It's okay. It's okay. But she hated it, and I think again that's fair. It's not her style of movie, and I think that that's the biggest takeaway is that like this movie is very divisive. Even from the reviews that you'll find online, that this movie is very much like you either loved or you hated. Like there's very few middle ground. I went to go see it a second time with my sister who's also seen it once, and then my parents who haven't seen it yet. And after watching it a second time, I saw a lot of missing details that I did not see the first time. And that made me love the movie so much more, that they were able to do a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of details that you wouldn't have understood in the first watching, you get in the second time watching. And so I really enjoyed it the second. I liked it more. I honestly liked it more the second time, even though I knew all of the things that were happening because of that. So what about you? What were your sort of like initial thoughts and feelings afterwards? I see that smile. He's about to completely disagree with everything I just said.
Oh, okay. So many feelings about this movie. And I have to just start off that, regardless of what I'm about to say right now, like I do deeply appreciate this film.
I think that's a very important thing to say. Is I whether
regardless of what I'm about to say, I deeply appreciate this film. Now that being said, I feel like this movie was a mess. Like I feel like I watched a 3-hour mess. Yeah. It felt like Ari Aster had a lot he wanted to do, and they just gave him free range to do it because of the success of his other 2 movies. And you can't always give a genius that much free range because they're gonna make some wild stuff. And like, Hereditary, pretty straightforward, fairly normal movie, some little weird stuff here and there. Midsommar, bit more weirder, but nevertheless pretty easy to follow.
Pretty straightforward. You can follow.
This was, I'm telling you, from beginning to end, from the first scene to the last scene, this whole movie is a what is going on. I'm telling you, and I am not joking. It was not until the last, and this is a 3-hour movie. It's a minute shy 3 hours. It was not until the last 20, 25 minutes where I was like, okay, I kind of get what's going on now.
For me, the first time I watched it, it would be like, the way that I would describe this movie is that it's kind of split into different chapters because each like main portion is in like one centralized area. Mm-hmm. So like towards the end of each chapter, I would feel like I would start to understand it, and then the new chapter would begin and completely flip everything that I thought I knew about the movie. Yeah, but no, I get you.
It's not even the story doesn't make sense, because the story is what makes the most sense. Like the plot itself makes a ton of sense. It makes a lot like Beau, he has to go see his mom. He's trying to get there. On the way there, all these different things happen. He finally gets there, and blah blah blah. Like whatever. Like the plot makes sense. It's the individual scenes that are so wild that just don't make any sense. Like Beau will be running outside to go across to the store, and it'll look like The Purge outside. like cars on fire, people running, like someone trying to like stab people. Like it's just like, and like you don't get a break. So the way I kind of described it to a friend of mine was, when you're watching a movie, or really not even a movie, just watching anything happen, your brain has a certain understanding of like, okay, I know what this is, I know what this means, and I know what theoretically is supposed to happen next in this given situation scenario, right? I feel what Beau is afraid he is constantly subverting that, so that your brain is working overtime the entire movie to try to be like, wait a minute, what? Like you're like, I don't get this, you know, like I don't
like how
get
do
what's
these
going
connect
on
and stuff.
Like, and just to give a quick example, there's one scene where like Beau has to take this medication that his therapist gives him at the very beginning of the movie, right? Which we'll get into that because it's also possibly very important. But his therapist gives him this medication at the very beginning of the movie, and his therapist emphasizes, take it with water. You were supposed to take this medication with water, right? And like it says, like in all caps, like take with water, you know, like, you know, and so he goes and he's taking his medication, but his water bottle's empty. And his fountain won't work. There's no water coming off the tub. Like he just can't get any water. And so he has to run across the street to the grocery store to get this water. And he like doesn't have his keys because his keys got stolen. So he leaves like a little brick to leave the door open to his building so he can get right back in. As he's at the store trying to get some water, right? Like he's just trying to pay for this water and he doesn't have enough money. So he doesn't have the correct change to get this water, right? He sees like 100 people flood into his building. And you're like, wait, what? And it's just all these like wild people on the street flood into his building, and then like they're like partying in his room, and then all this stuff completely break everything, and like then they all leave or whatever. And then he goes and like he's like taking a bath and doing his thing, blah 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 blah, like afterwards when he goes back in his apartment. And then all of a sudden like he looks up, there's a man still from the party hanging above his singing, screaming, help me, while there's like a spider on him, and then he falls into this tub and Beau runs out naked. Like, it's just like that one scene is the whole movie. The whole movie is just random weird stuff where you're like, it almost feels like I'm watching like a David Lynch film, like a Lynchian film, where it's just kind of like, all right, this definitely doesn't happen in normal reality. So like from the first scene to the last scene, nothing is normal reality. So your brain is sitting here like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why does that person not have a face? Or like, why is this person running around naked, stabbing the air? Or like, why is like this, like just nothing makes sense. Like it shouldn't make sense. And like, I get adding in a little bit of that. Like to me, Midsommar was the perfect balance of, okay, this all makes sense to me, and what's going on here? Whereas this was like 99% what's going on here. Now, Andy, you said second watch, it definitely felt a little bit better for you. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So if you are still here and you haven't seen the movie yet, don't be afraid. I'm going to give you some tips. I think the biggest tip I can tell you, actually, I'm going to give you one big tip. The biggest tip I can tell you is to just turn your brain off. And this is from Ari Aster himself. Turn your brain off and just enjoy the ride. Like, don't try to make sense of the movie. And I think that that's a mistake that
probably one mistake I made. Yeah.
Both of us made. We both tried to make sense of the movie as
look at me trying to make sense of the movie.
We tried to make sense of it as the movie was going. And I think that if you try to not make sense of it until the very end, when you have all of the pieces of the story, I think maybe then you'll be able to kind of sit and enjoy it a little bit more. But some of the details that I picked up throughout the movie that I think I missed on the first time around, the biggest one is that he gives it away in the beginning of the movie, which is something that he does a lot. Ari Aster does a lot. He always foreshadows the end of the movie. You know, in Midsommar, there was a sheet that kind of showed the story. I don't remember Hereditary off the top of my head, but I know that there was probably something in Hereditary that showcased the end. But in this movie that I completely missed the first time, that I got on the second time, was at the end of the movie, you know, Beau's on a boat that capsizes on itself and explodes. And in the beginning of the movie, there's a little kid playing with a motorized boat in a pond, and his mom comes over and is like, "You need to listen to me from now on," or something like that, and grabs the kid and runs away, and the boat flips over on itself. So I think that like seeing that detail, like like it foreshadows the end of the movie, and so that's just something that he does throughout the movie. Something that's really important to know is that Beau's mom, also known as Mona, um, is super successful with her career. Like she lives a very lavish lifestyle. She has millions. She's a like definitely more than a multimillionaire. Like I feel like multimillionaire is undercutting it. Like she has a successful business empire. Um, and something that I missed throughout the movie was just like how prevalent that brand was. Like every time that Beau was eating food, it was actually packaged meals
Oh.
from the mom's company. Like every
Wow.
every person that Beau interacted with was actually an employee of his mom. His mom like hired like from like Grace and Roger to the random homeless people that lived outside of Beau's apartment to like Beau's apartment building itself was all owned and organized by his mom. Even Elaine, his love interest, an employee of
Yeah.
his mom. Like every person at Beau, the therapist employee of his mom, every person that Beau interacts in the movie is a staff member of his mom. And I like did not fully realize that until the second time watching it.
Wait, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, what's up?
So one thing I felt after my first watch, right? Like kind of just giving like my own thought analysis of this movie was like Beau was a man child.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole movie. That was like my like once I finished the movie, that was the whole thing of like this man has like desperately needed his mother for everything and like has no control whatsoever of his life and like getting things done, getting things in order. Like every single thing is like his mother has to do with him or because of his mother or whatever. And so yeah, you saying that like that she does and owns everything around him and like even his food was from her makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even like the building itself, like there was a floor plan of like of a building that said Erectus Ejectus, like that
Mm-hmm.
was in the mom's house that was like literally his apartment building.
Mm.
The next big thing that I noticed throughout the film was just like the use of water. Like there is water throughout the movie. Like obviously it starts off with, the child playing with the boat in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But every painting, like whenever there's a painting, there's always a boat and there's like some form of like stream, river, like something like that. And so like just like the use of water throughout the movie, I don't know what that symbolizes. I still haven't put that together, but I know that like that was just something that was throughout the movie. I think, something else that I missed the first time I picked up on the second time, there's a point in the movie where where Beau gets hit by a car. Um, First off, I missed that Grace and Roger, who are the two people that take care of him. I
Mm-hmm.
missed that those are the two people that hit him. I like don't
Mm-hmm.
know how I missed that, but they missed that. They were the ones that hit him. The second thing I missed that kind of connects with that is towards the end of the chapter, like Beau finds a remote and Grace tells him to go to channel 78, and it's actually a recording of his life where he can rewind, he can fast forward, and so he fast forwards. And of course, like that's not something that I missed, but one thing that I did miss was it's a pretty quick frame. If it's a blink if you miss it sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You actually see the auditorium. He ends up in the
Oh, really?
auditorium
You see
where
that
that
on
final
the
you see it. I
oh.
don't yeah, I didn't get a close enough look to see like if you see the capsized boat or anything, but you
Mm-hmm.
definitely see the auditorium where it ends. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I missed. And then something else that just like small details that like I know I'm going on a lot, but I think just like one last thing that I kind of just like notice for that's important to mention is that like towards the end of the movie, he is like going through his mom's house, and in his mom's house has like a timeline of the company that she manages. And every time, like throughout the timeline, you notice that Mona is selling different type of medication, and it's always advertised through Beau, which is not like that
Yeah.
particular idea is not something that I missed, but what I missed was like the the drugs themselves and the time periods that the drugs are being sold. So when he was younger, a lot of it was like cold cough medication, because when you're younger you get a lot, that's when you're still building up your immune system, that's when you're more susceptible to colds and stuff like that. So you saw a lot of like cold medication and allergy medication. As he got older, you saw medication that focused around like his teenage years, so like a lot of like anti-acne drugs and stuff like that. And so like this is like I was talking to my sister about this, like I would love to watch this movie again just so that I can, or even just this scene again, just so that I can like do like a frame by frame of the decades, so that because I feel like that also tells even more of the story. Was just like, because each decade just kind of shifts along with his life, the based off of Beau's needs, and it kind of really showcases how much his mom is controlling and trying to take over and really like care for him. It's a place of care, but also control Beau.
Care, yeah,
So,
care and control, 100%. Um, okay, I have a few things that I wanted to talk about for this movie. So one um, is this all a dream slash it was all like a drug like fueled nightmare or whatever? And the
yeah,
reason I asked that is because I asked the same question originally when I watched Midsommar, right?
yeah, of course.
And so it makes sense that once again the same director kind of has like his kind of little things that he likes to do. So I was actually, so I talked to a friend about this movie after watching the movie, right? It was like 1 a.m, for like an
Right.
hour, right? Talking to this friend about this movie, right? And in Midsommar, maybe 20 minutes into the movie, 20-30 minutes into the movie, the main character does shrooms.
Yeah.
And for like, and then all of a sudden, things that don't really seem normal start happening, which makes you wonder, is this reality, or are we
Yeah.
just getting this through the character's eyes who's like high on shrooms? And the whole movie, like she's like having to drink this tea that's like mushroom tea or whatnot, and like it's just out of her mind the whole movie. And so like you don't really know what in the world is like actually real and what's kind of like not, whatever. So for this movie, we get one of the very first scenes is Beau getting prescribed this drug, this new drug that's supposed to be like really helpful for his anxiety, but he just has to take it with water. And then
Yeah.
what we see is Beau once again, like very early into this film, and I think before anything too weird happens, maybe not, but like he takes this medication and doesn't have any water or whatever. And so part of me wonders, one, what's this all like a drug-fueled dream, trip, whatever, considering that most of the things that happen, I would say, not even have, most of the things that happen in this film do not happen in reality, like are not possible. And so
Right.
it kind of makes you wonder, like, all right, are we, since we're getting this from Beau's perspective, and he has crazy high anxiety, and he's also on some new like medication that is like wild and he took the wrong way. And so I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that, or
Yeah, I
just
think I think that's such a great question. I also would love to hear what you are gonna say. So don't just think you're off the hook. Um, but um, I it's definitely not all or none. It's definitely not all or like none of it. Like it's definitely, there's a middle ground on like what is real and what isn't real. And I
Mhm.
think that you can definitely, there is an argument that can be made about most of the movie being a drug trip. There's also, to me, I think there's a fair argument that it's not necessarily like um like none of it is real, but things might be like
Skewed kind of.
skewed slash pushed to the extremes. And I think that that's kind of where my sort of opinion is that
Mhm.
it's definitely pushed to the extremes, but like I don't think everything happened exactly how it happened. I don't think that Beau is, seeing like naked people stabbing each other and stuff like that. But I do think that he probably has severe anxiety due to the crippling, controlling nature of his mother, to the point where, he is exaggerates how extreme it is to live alone, because I think that he's not used to living on his own. I think that that's a lot of it, is that he's used to having somebody take care of him, someone provide the decisions for him. I mean, he always asks other people, what should I do? What should I do? So I think that he's not used to making decisions on his own. And so I think that what we're seeing obviously is a bit exaggerated, but I could definitely see where, like, Beau is anxious on living on his own. He finds out that his mom died, quote unquote. And he's like trying to figure out a way to get home. Do I think that he actually got naked and got hit and like got naked, ran down the street? I don't know for sure. But I could see where he is in a manic state where he runs out, and I could honestly see that he could get hit by a car in his manic state. And I could honestly believe that in order to avoid getting in trouble, these two nice people here take him, instead of taking him to the hospital where they would get potentially in trouble for hitting someone, they take him back, take care of him. I think like a lot of the other things are exaggerated and stuff like that. So I'm not going to break down the entire movie, because again, that's going to take 45 minutes. But I think you see where I'm going with that. Like, there are definitely things that could be real in theory, that is then, because it's only from Beau's perspective, is like a super anxiety ridden lens that the audience sees. What do you think?
I think that's totally fair.
That's he's about to say no, I'm wrong.
I think that's totally fair. And I think that you're probably right, to be honest. But I would say that's more how I felt with Midsommar. I know I'm bringing up Hereditary, Midsommar,
but
probably
that's
a lot.
fair.
Just
that it's the same. It's the same director, person. Same. Yeah.
But like, with this, I will say I felt like the whole thing was near drug and like filled nightmare. Only because nothing made sense. Like, once again, like I said this earlier, like it's not like it's a little weird or a little strange. Like, not like even just him walking through the hall and talking to like one of the, like, I think it's like janitor people in like the hallway of his building, or maybe the manager, and it's like nothing makes sense. Or there's a part where like his like neighbor slips like a note under his door saying, "Hey, can you please turn the music down? I'm trying to sleep." Beau's not playing music. Dead quiet. Beau's not playing music. And then the neighbor comes back like a few minutes, like an hour or so later, and it's like, "Hey, please turn down the music. I'm trying to sleep." And then Beau's just like, "What is going on? Like, I'm not." Right. Beau is silent, asleep. Goes back to sleep, and then all of a sudden, neighbor starts banging on the wall, and it's like, how do you like it? And so just blast the music. Like, it's just stuff like that. Like, nothing is, like, literally nothing is making any sense whatsoever. Like, he gets hit by these people, and then he's put in like a house on like a hospital bed almost, and it has like an ankle monitor on. That's like it's just nothing makes sense. So for me personally, I feel like the whole thing was a drug-filled kind of nightmare. Do
you think it starts from when he takes the drugs in the very beginning?
I think so, but I'll have to watch it again because I can't remember if some weird stuff happened before he took the drugs, though. Yeah. He takes the drugs within the first like 15 minutes, but some weird stuff might happen even before that. So like, I don't fully remember, but it definitely gets a lot weirder after he takes the drugs. Well, no, because even him like running into his apartment, like there's still that guy outside. Right after
he. Yeah, I mean that's before he took it twice,
right?
Which is also kind of weird.
Oh, he took it twice.
Well, he took it when he was walking home.
Oh, okay.
That was the first time he took it, and that's kind of where, to me, that's kind of where you can make the. That's where you can make the case. Yeah. That's where you can make the case that this whole thing was like a drug-ridden, like a whole like thing, because like he is taking it as he's walking home,
and then
by the time that he takes it the second time, all of this weird stuff is already happening.
Fair.
So
fair.
Like, that to me, like, I think if you're going to make the case that it's all like a drug related thing, it's
You have to
often when he's
definitely.
walking home. So you know
That's
what?
fair.
I think there's no, I think to me, like there's no wrong answer because both sides are equally valid.
Mhm.
Like, at least in my eyes, they're equally valid. Maybe you're like Andy, you're totally wrong, but
No, I think I think you are very valid. Like I was not joking. I think you're very valid in that point.
yeah,
I'm
no,
just curious.
I could definitely, and I don't even like, to me, like, it's not even out, like, beyond my imagination that it is completely fake. In fact,
Yeah,
when I saw it the first time, that was my first thought, was like, this entire thing is fake.
yeah.
And like, to me, I'm not, we're not ready to wrap it up yet, or at least not me. I'm not
Not
ready to
even
wrap it up,
close. I feel like there's a lot left.
but for me, like, when my original, I'm going to go into what my original prediction is and save what my new prediction is, but like, my original prediction was going to be that, like, it ends with like going back to the therapist's office,
Mhm.
and like the therapist asked him to kind of outline what this trip is going to look like, because that's kind of like a common thing that therapists will have you do, because to kind of like showcase like what can happen in
Mhm.
like for an anxious person, like what could happen, and like kind of have him reflect on like, okay, is this really realistic? I was like, this is going to be my like initial prediction, and then when I saw it the second time, I realized that that is completely wrong. Like, I just don't think that, for me, I don't think that that is the correct. I don't think that's correct.
Mhm.
Um, but I would like to hear from you your take on, like, if you feel like generational trauma is like a factor in this movie, or in like, and if so, like, how much generational trauma do you think is there?
Hmm. Do they talk anything about the mom's trauma? I can't remember.
Yeah,
They did
yeah. So
remind me.
yeah, so when they meet up with the mom talks about how like her mom never like showed her any love, and
Oh, okay.
like never showed her any love, and now that's what made her like pour out all her love for Beau.
Okay. Okay. Only thing I remember.
That's fair.
The
You know
only
what?
thing, no, listen, the only thing I remember about the mom's mom is when she pointed to the picture and it's like
That's
a
when she
gremlin.
talks about it. That's when she talks about it.
It's like a gremlin on the wall, bro. It's not even a human dog. It's just like a green gremlin.
It's a painting of her mom that looks like it definitely looks like a gremlin. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, that looks like my grandma over there. No.
Gremlin. If that's the case, then 100%. Because I mean, so once again, Ari Aster, so far, all three of his movies are based on trauma.
Yeah.
Hereditary is just general family trauma, like trauma just from your family, whatever. Um, Midsommar is relationship trauma,
Yeah.
relationship and isolation, basically. This movie is mommy issues, basically, like parent
Yeah.
trauma, your parents, you know. And so yeah, if she said like the reason like she didn't feel love from her mother, so now she like tries to like overtly, control Beau with like all her love or whatever. And all this, was like, you know, I mean, I'm just gonna say personally for myself, I definitely kind of like resonated with just like issues with my own mother, from like when
Yeah.
I was a child, of like, the idea of like, I love you, I love you, I love you so much, but like it was love to the point where it was like felt very controlling and
Yeah.
very suffocating. Which you could definitely tell is a bit of a thing with Beau.
Yeah. And
Um,
Beau said during the movie that like he would try to reciprocate the love, but it wasn't in the way that
that
the
she wanted.
mom wanted.
Yeah.
And so I think that that definitely plays a factor in their relationship, and I think that, like, Beau had to live with that sort of trauma, and it definitely impacted his entire life. I mean, he never had an intimate relationship with anyone because of the control that his mom had and the lies that the mom told him. Um, and it's just like, I think that in a way was, he was trying to prevent that from being passed on to another generation, because at this point he's an older, like the movie takes place when he's like, I would say in his late 50s, maybe early 60s.
Oh dang,
So
that old?
I think he looks old. I don't know how old would you say Beau is?
I mean, I guess now that you think about it, he definitely looks older than 40. So
Yeah,
probably 50. You're probably right.
yeah,
Yeah, 50
yeah.
ish.
I would say like maybe mid 50s,
Maybe 50 is fair.
maybe mid 50s. So I think that like he's never had an intimate relationship. And I think that that is definitely attributed to the control that his mom had. I mean, his mom told him that, his father died. His father died inside of her, which I think honestly is such a huge. Now that I think about it, like you're getting like Andy's hot takes here. I think that was such a metaphor. Like I don't think that I don't think he literally died. I think that he metaphorically died inside of her, because I think that but he was never a part of Beau's life, and that definitely connects to Beau's trauma. Part of Beau's anxiety and trauma is the fact that he doesn't know his father, and he resents that fact. He resents not knowing who his father is, and he knows that his mom knows more than what she's telling him. And I think that metaphorically he died inside of her, because I think that he like took off, left, said peace when he found out that Mona was pregnant. And I think that that meant that he was dead to her. That's just my hot take. I could be completely
That's
wrong.
Fair. That's a fair hot take.
That's just my opinion.
I mean, the whole movie's on metaphor, so like I actually probably agree with you. I think you're probably right on that. I think you're right.
I think that also plays into like the scene with the dad in the attic, which I don't know if you want to get to that now or if you want to wait.
We'll get to that. We'll put it in the notes. I'm putting a whole thing in notes because like there's so much.
There's so much to unpack with the three. You know what? We didn't get to you guys last week, so we have to make up for it.
You're getting double this time. All right, I got a question for you.
All right.
So, and this is like a big picture question.
So, big picture question. Okay.
This movie, technically, if you look on the genre, is marketed as a comedy.
Oh, 100% agree.
Wait.
Oh, I agree.
You agree that's a comedy?
I agree it's a comedy. Is that where you were going? Is that where you were going with it?
I was gonna say I disagree. That's a comedy, but you go first. I want to see what your thoughts.
It was funny. I don't know. I was just laughing throughout the movie. I just thought I definitely can see like the horror aspect of it, but like because we're it's hard not to compare this movie to his previous works. Even though to me, if you're gonna ask me, and maybe you agree with this, but I think that Beau is Afraid and is in its own separate classification compared to his two films. Like I think that Hereditary, Midsommar are like clear, obvious, like not meant to be comedies, meant to be horror, suspense movies.
They're full horrors.
And then Beau is Afraid is its own separate piece altogether, just coincidentally made by the same person. I personally felt like there were definitely tense moments, but the tense moments were also riddled in with comedy, or they weren't long enough to really scare me. Like Hereditary, like that entire final sequence with
last 20 minutes is
with the person up on the ceiling and jumping down and all of that, and like the entire, like it just was scary. Midsommar, I think Midsommar was like less traditional scary and more like I don't even know how to classify the type of scary, but it was definitely a little scarier than that. It was scary, but I don't think as scary as Hereditary in the traditional sense.
More disturbing, less scary.
Yes, I think that's better. I think that's the correct way. But Midsommar, like it was just like I just thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny.
I feel like I would keep it in the same lineage still, but just further down. So if it's
like a distant cousin.
It's like, so if it was like Hereditary, Midsommar, Beau is Afraid. Like it's like far down the line, and like each of its movies kind of got less scary, a little more disturbing. I feel Beau is Afraid is his most disturbing movie in my personal opinion.
Definitely. It's definitely the most disturbing.
It's the most disturbing,
doesn't make it
it's the least scary. No, it's not scary at all. I mean, so here's the thing. I don't think it's a comedy, but I also don't think it's a horror. I think it's a drama that has aspects of comedy and aspects of horror. There's some kind of like horrific stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, there's more comedy than there is horror. And then like they're saying like so when it was like he goes to his mom's house for the funeral, and it's just like the chandelier here is what killed her.
There's like a plaque. There's like a plaque. It's like this is where the plaque. This is where the chandelier fell.
Or like when she pointed at her mom, it's just like a gremlin on the painting. Like there's a bunch of scenes that are like very obviously funny, right? Like
or even like the sex scene. Even the sex scene where like
so the only scene where I felt like this movie was a comedy was the sex scene. That
scene.
whole scene was hilarious.
That was so funny. That was amazing.
That being said, for the majority of this movie, it felt like a nightmare drama more than a nightmare comedy. I would definitely consider this movie. I mean, honestly, could kind of consider it multi-genre, to be honest.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick like a prominent, it would be drama. And then
would you? Okay, so here's my question for you. Then, would you, if somebody was like, you have to pick between comedy and horror, where would you put it?
More comedy than horror.
Yeah.
If I had to pick between comedy and horror, but to me, it's just more drama than either of them.
I can respect that. I agree.
But like I said, like there are funny scenes, like pretty hilarious scenes, but then there are also some pretty scary, horrific scenes. I think just ultimately is like. So here's a big thing, right? So remember I said I was talking with my friend about it for like an hour, 2 hours afterwards. So my friend, I was kind of this argument to him, and he thought it was a comedy 100%. And so he's talking to me about it, and he's like talking to me about the scenes. And as he's talking about the scenes, I'm cracking up, dying, because he's talking about, like I mentioned earlier, we're like Beau's in like the convenience store trying to buy a bottle of water, and he just sees like 100 people like just rushing into his building, and the cashier's like, "You're 40 cents short." And he's like,
"I would call the police.
I got the money." And he's like, "You're 20 more cents short." He's like, "I swear I got the money." And it's like a really like funny scene. But as I was watching it, nobody in the theater is laughing. It was dead silent and like more of like a, oh my God, like what happened? And like all these people are like gonna like sneak into
this. It's because everyone's confused on what's happening.
Yeah. So like we were so like, I mean, like, if I'm being honest, it was almost, I was so confused that a lot of the scenes that were probably meant to be funny weren't funny, because the whole time I'm trying to figure out, is this actually happening? Is this not happening? Like, what's going on here? And so like my mind isn't like taking the time to like laugh at these jokes, because my mind isn't even really recognizing them as jokes. But like when I'm reading, like my first like basically just like retelling the scenes, and multiple scenes, these like retelling, and I'm like, man, those are funny when you say it. And then I'm thinking, you know what? Like Ari Aster, everything he's directed so far has been horror. This is his first step out of horror. And like you can even tell, even the scenes that aren't scary have a certain intensity and like strangeness and like, oh my God, what's like that, oh my God, what's around the corner feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And
so it definitely had tense moments.
To me, that intent, that like tensity, like really kind of subverted what comedy might have been there. Like I said, like the only scene I really felt the full comedy was that sex scene, which is just here. Like
I'm just gonna say, you could not get through that description of the scene without laughing. So thus it's a comedy. Yeah. Point made. It's a comedy. After describing the scene, you are cracking up. It is a comedy.
It's a comedy on script, but I just felt like in terms of like how he shot it like it was a horror almost. So I think that's where my mind was kind of confused, because like there were funny scenes, and I remember laughing in the theater at scenes, and like definitely more than I would in Midsommar or Hereditary. But like it just felt like he was a horror director trying to be funny. It didn't feel like it was a comedy, personally.
Do you feel like he did it successfully though? Because there are I know that you were telling in reflection, in hindsight, do you feel like he did? Because there are definitely movies out there that are intended to be horror films or intended to be a certain type of film that throw in comedy, and sometimes it lands, and like sometimes it's successful, but other times it's just kind of like not super well landed. A lot like what was it? What was the movie that we did a couple weeks ago? Was it Smile? Yeah, it was Smile. The one we did with Smile, where like they tried to throw in comedy and it just like was not perfect. Like it just was like, this is kind of odd.
But see, to me, there's a difference between comedic relief and dramas or horror films, and then a comedy. There were plenty of scenes that felt like, well, actually, I would say this went above comedic relief, because there's definitely a decent amount of comedy scenes. So, and went above comedic relief, but to me, still not enough for me to feel it was a comedy. So ultimately, I would say that was a swing and a miss. If you really wanted this to feel like a comedy, I might just need to watch it again, because once again, you and my other friend I trust both have said you two felt like it was a comedy. So it's probably just because I went into the mindset of like, this is my favorite horror director. Let me go see what this is. And like, it was just kind of like, I just didn't see a lot of it as funny. But personally,
it definitely was funnier the second time.
Yeah.
I think that, it's like, and I know we already spoke about this, but it's just like such a common thing. And it's something that we both did, that's like, you go into this movie trying to make sense of it as you're going along. And like, the more that you try to do it, I think that the more you try to make sense of it, the more frustrated you get.
Mm-hmm. Can I tell you what I thought was the weirdest, most I am completely lost scene in this movie for me?
I mean, there's a couple that I can
take a guess. Take a guess. Let's make this fun.
Is it when he finds who his dad is?
That whole wood scene, yes.
The wood scene. So wait, no. I'm talking about the attic. Are you talking about
No. I'm talking about the woods.
Yeah. No, you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. As much as I enjoyed the movie more the second time around, I still don't understand that part of the movie. To me, like the only thing that I can kind of like the only thing I can make sense of it is that like it kind of talks about his like intimacy issues and kind of like the fear he has of having relationships and stuff like that. But that's really the only thing. That's just speculating. I don't know.
It felt like a mini movie within the movie.
Oh, for sure.
Like the movie has once again, regardless of how weird it is, it has a pretty basic general plot structure. Beau is home, has to make it to his mom, runs on the street, gets hit by a car, ends up being taken in by this family. So they try to help him recover till he's well enough to go to his mom's house. He ends up escaping from this family because they're crazy. And then let's just skip the wood scene for a second. Then he ends up making it to his mom's house. He has a conversation with his mom. Movie ends, whatever.
Find out that his mom's not actually dead. I think that's an important thing.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
His mom's not actually dead. We will get there, but like his mom doesn't actually die. It's a lot.
And the beginning of the movie, like he finds out that his mom dies, and that's actually he has to make it time for the funeral, which is what he's trying to make it the whole movie for the funeral. Actually, maybe he finds out she's not dead, but we'll get to that later. So anywho, in between this whole plot, when he's running away from the crazy people's house or whatever, he ends up finding this community of forest people.
Yes.
That are like making a play. They're just like setting
up
for a play.
Orphans,
randomly. They're orphans making a play randomly in the center of this forest. And then as he's watching the play, they're like, "Oh, you didn't know this play's about you?" He's like, "Wait, what?" So like he's going to this play, and then all of a sudden, for like the next like 15, 20 minutes, like there's like this play, but like it feels like a dream within a dream. Like, and it's being narrated by this voice. So like randomly for the next 20 minutes, the next 20 minutes of this movie is narrated by this voice of Beau's life and all the things that have happened into his life from his childhood to the point where he's old and gray and all this. And then all of a sudden it just brings you back in reality real quick. Or reality for the movie. But it felt like some like weird dream state where like once again, the whole movie already feels like a weird dream state. But now within that, there's like another specific like weird dream state.
Are you saying that there's some sort of connection between this movie and Inception? Is that what you're trying to say?
He might have watched it when he wrote the script. That's all I'm saying. Okay. He might have watched it
that part of the movie.
Okay. But it was so weird. Like it's so like the whole movie's already weird. This 20-minute scene or whatever is so weird. I remember it was the first point while I was watching the movie, I actively thought I want to leave. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my
god! Like, I actively thought like I'm kind of over this because like you already had a pretty confusing movie. I didn't know what's going on, and then you give me this 20-minute scene that it's just so weird and confusing. And I'm like, dude, is this gonna be the whole 2.5 hours with no resolution, just weird scenes that don't make any sense the whole way? And like I was at that point, because at that point you're like an hour and a half into the movie when you hit that scene, and you're just kind of like, dude, I'm done. Like I felt exhausted. I was just like, dude,
I think
so
you might even
tired.
be like, I think it honestly might be like you might be closer to 2 hours. I think
yeah, 2 hours at that point. Like it's just like
I think it's like almost 2 hours. The scene is like it's so I I can understand where you're coming from, because like even when I was watching it the first time, that was the one part of the movie that I was just like, how does this even connect? Like I felt like if you took that part out of the movie, it would still make sense. Like I feel like that's the one, that's maybe like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if you take out that one part, the movie is not damaged in any way. I think that the movie is not hurt. Every other part of the movie where like
honestly, yeah, he could have cut that whole thing, to be honest.
But like if you cut out that one part, because it doesn't really I mean, again, like maybe it does add to the story. Maybe it's just I don't understand.
He possibly finds his father.
He possibly finds his father.
There's a guy who claims to be his dad. Or does he say it? I think
he does. Right? He does kind of claim to be his dad. So yeah, like maybe that, but like it's also speculation. Like, you know, there are a couple of times where people claim to be his dad, or, you know, not people specifically, but there are a couple of references to like that might be his dad or something like that. So again, what's one less reference? I don't know. So I can definitely understand. And again, like maybe if I watch another maybe if I watch a YouTube video, or maybe if I watch it a third time, like maybe that sequence will make sense. But I can definitely agree with you. Like I felt like I just didn't see how it connected with the rest of the movie.
And then that whole scene ends with the whole play area being shot up by this dude, which like also, so like what's the thing with this guy? Like what's his importance? Like I get this plot behind him of like he, you know, like he was okay, so first of all, y'all should have seen this movie if you're listening to this episode, because Marie can't describe every single thing. But there's the like weird military dude who lives in a trailer at was it Grace and Roger's house, who are the people who like hit Beau but take him in. They have a daughter, and then they have this guy who was like a close friend of their brother in the military, or sorry, a close friend of their son. When their son was in the military, their son died. But this friend of their son seems to have PTSD, but they like care for him, you know, they like keep him in and care for him. But like this guy's not a normal guy at all. Like he's like always like pretending he's in battle, like randomly throwing grenades and like running around. And like at one point, because they believe that Beau killed their daughter, they like stick him like a dog. They stick him on Beau. And then that's how you get the whole wood scene. It's Beau running through the woods trying to get away from this guy. Then this whole weird 20-30 minute play scene happens, and then this guy comes and like shoots up the place, and then I can't remember how he gets to the mom's house from dad, but I think he hitchhikes or whatever. What did he do? But
you're talking about Beau?
Yeah.
Beau hitchhikes, yeah. Hitchhikes.
But anywho, so like, did you understand that like military character dude? Like I think
in theory it makes sense. I think in the nature of the film, it makes sense, but I think when you examine it outside, you're like, what is going on? But to me, his character, like, it made sense, but also, again, if we're going with the whole like elimination of like that entire part, you can easily have it so that Beau hitchhikes from running away from the house. Like Beau is running away from the house, hitchhikes and gets to the place. And that's how you can get to the mom's house.
So I was gonna say, in a weird way, as much as that scene seems completely unnecessary, does it also not seem like a weird microcosm of the whole movie? Like it also seems like, as weird as we feel that scene might be unnecessary, it also arguably, like if I heard Ari Aster explain it, I could easily see him saying, "This is the most important scene in the whole movie." Like obviously, no, I can obviously see him saying that, because like the whole like. It's weird, but like it must have some purpose. because it's like it's not the center of the movie, but it's almost center, and it seems like a weird like.
I mean, it's the last major part of the movie before you get to the mom's house.
But to me, the mom's house is like a whole 40 minutes.
Oh no, for sure. But it's the last major transition before you get to the mom's house.
Yeah.
All right, Marquise, we can probably go like another 2-3 hours on this. But I think that we got to get to the end. As much as I love talking about this movie, like we got to get to the end.
Okay. So where do we want to? Where's the end? Where are we starting with the end? The mom's house or what? Like,
okay.
We gotta mention the sex scene, and we gotta mention the attic. So.
I'm gonna do it quick. We've already talked about bits and pieces of the ending throughout the podcast, so I think that like by skipping some things, we can get to it. So Beau gets to the mom's house from hitchhiking. He misses the whole thing. He goes, he sees the plaque, he sees catering leaving, he's going through the house. He notices in the casket that the person's body has a birthmark, and that's important. Fast forward, skipping a whole lot of stuff because it's not important because we've already talked about it. Elaine, who is his love interest, shows up, and they start talking, they start rekindling because Elaine was the person that Beau waited his entire life for, Elaine. And they start talking. He tells how he waited for her. They hit it off. They go to the bedroom immediately after, like pretty much immediately after meeting up. They have like a short conversation, go up to the mom's bedroom and make sweet, passionate love in the mom's bed.
The funniest thing in the whole movie.
It's so funny. It is so funny. Because from Beau's perspective, he's like freaking out because he knows that if he finishes, he's gonna die. Because that's what he's been led to believe his entire life. And I'm just gonna do a quick sidebar. The use of Mariah Carey's song. You're a genius.
Fire.
There is an interview with Ari Aster talking about how he needed that song, and I think that song is pivotal for a variety of reasons. And it's okay. So they're having a great time. Beau is like starting to realize, oh no, it's happening. I'm about to finish. And Beau is freaking out. And he finishes, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm still alive. And then he looks up and sees Elaine is sitting still dead.
Like she's like a mannequin, like he's frozen
dead, like stiff. And then the line from the song comes, you'll never escape me. And I think that is really like, that was pure gold, because then the mom comes and you see the mom, and at this point as the audience you realize that the mom's not dead. They get into a whole argument. You find out that Beau was being tested this whole time to see how much he loved her and tried to get back. Beau actually realized that his mom wasn't dead because of the birthmark and figured that it was the caregiver that sacrificed her life for this test. They get into a heated argument. I'm not going to go into details about the argument, but it's very heated. And then it leads to Beau finally getting access to the attic, which has been a off-limits zone for him. And
he's been having dreams about it too.
He's been having dreams about this. And I would say that oddly enough, like this whole sequence to me was the most normal part of the movie up until this part. Nothing really felt that bizarre, other than, of course, like compared to the rest of the movie, nothing felt that bizarre. They get to the attic. He gets allowed into the attic, and this is when it gets weird.
The weirdest thing in a movie.
The weirdest thing.
I was not prepared for this. I'm telling you.
No one is prepared for this.
I thought I would see everything but this. This was the last thing I thought I would see.
And this is like borderline. This is when this is family friendly podcast hits the gray area. because his, he finds a flashlight, he sees another Beau. And to me, that was actually the
His
mom
twin,
says,
right? Didn't it say
the
his
mom
brother
says
twin?
that was actually a memory, not a dream. And so I think that that's actually Beau's brother, quote
That's been
unquote,
locked up in this
who's been
attic.
locked up in his attic. And then the flashlight turns over to this giant spider penis. There's no other way to say
Dude,
this
it's
giant
so
spider
weird.
penis. The military man busts in, shoots up the penis person straight in the balls.
Oh, that's right. That's how I
Straight in the balls.
forgot.
And then the spider person stabs the tentacle through its not tentacle, but like its leg. It's like straight through the guy's head. Beau goes down, and they continue to, like, the mom was like, you were never supposed to see this. And again, to another sort of heated argument where the mom is like, I was trying to shelter you, I was trying to protect you your entire life, and really she was laying into Beau, and Beau starts strangling her. He stops strangling her. She falls into a glass box. Beau, in shock, leaves the house, goes into a electric boat, a motorboat that you see from earlier in the movie. He's going through a cave, and then the boat stops working, the lights flicker on, and you see that he's inside some sort of auditorium, and he's on trial, and he's being guilted.
People all around.
Like people are all around. They are like, those people are there to be entertained. And I think that this is the most brilliant ending to a movie I've seen in a very long time. There's a lawyer that's laying into him and guilting him about how, Beau, you were not a good son because of XYZ. There's a defense attorney who's like trying to stand up for Beau.
Can't hear though.
You could barely hear him. It's not an Ari Aster film unless you see a head get smashed in. Somebody throws the defense attorney off the stage, and the defense attorney's face gets smashed in on a rock. Beau is starting to scream for help as the motor from the boat starts like smoking, exploding. He's screaming. He's like, somebody help me. He looks at his mom. He's screaming for help from his mom. And at this point, like, it looks like there's a moment of clarity when Beau realizes that he is on his own. And at that very moment, the engine explodes, the boat capsizes, people start leaving. You do hear the mom start screaming, crying, and like almost sounds like she regrets what happens, but is ultimately like led out of the arena. And the movie just like ends, and it doesn't go black. It actually stays, and you watch the people like leave out as if you were one of the people there. And I think that's why it's so brilliant, is that it's like you were one of the people there in that theater. And it just kind of stays there, and then eventually, of course, like even the credits start to roll before it goes to black, and then of course, eventually, like all movies, it goes to black. So, I miss anything?
No.
Did I miss anything important?
You hit that nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. Anything I was going to mention, you just put right there. But there's a few things within all that. So first, just let me say that how long? So like from the moment he arrives at his mom's house, say what? There's like 40 minutes left of the movie.
Yeah, it's gotta be like 40, 45.
Yeah, 40, 45 minutes, right? This is my favorite part of the movie. By far, not even close.
Not because it's the ending, though, right?
Not because it's the good clarification. Not because it's over, but because like finally you're getting an explanation of like not of what's happened. Even you're not even getting explained what's happened, but you're at least getting okay. Finally, I'm getting the point of the movie.
Yeah,
because like the whole movie is just weird stuff happening to him as he's on his way to his mom's house. Finally, and like you kind of like glossed over a little bit, but you said like this like heated argument between him and his mom. To me, that's the exposition for the whole movie right there.
Yes,
it's that
100%.
Argument between him and his mom. It's just like that's where you finally get the explanation of like what is the purpose of this movie. As his mom is sitting here criticizing him over and over, saying, "I did this for you and you didn't care. I did this for you and you didn't care. I done this and you didn't care. You show no respect here. You show no concern here. You didn't call me here. You didn't want here." And his mom is just hounding him.
know, and also like, you know, you find out that his therapist sessions were recorded, and
his mom hired a
like
therapist.
The therapist shared everything with him, all of that stuff.
All this stuff. And so it's just kind of like, so you finally get this final exposition of him versus mom, where like he just has to sit here and take this. And for a second, he actually chokes her. He's like so angry, and he can't believe she's done this. She's like giving a fake therapist all this, and so finally she's like choking him, or he's choking her, but then he lets her go. He's like, "Oh, mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got over me. Blah blah blah, whatever, you know." And then that's when he like runs away and does the whole thing. So one is, I liked it because I finally got some clarity of like, what is the purpose of this film? And so I finally got it right there of like this man who's been under the control of his mother for so long that one, he doesn't really know what to do without her, but he also can't really live with her because she's just too controlling. And so he needs her, while at the same time, it's to me, it shows really well, because he said this is like issues, I'm assuming, with his own mother to a certain degree, like the issues of like someone you love and hate at the same time. Like, yeah, I love you, but I also hate you for the way you've made me and all the things you kind of do to me and all the issues I had because of you. But yeah, I still love you at the same time because you're your mother and my mother, and you cared for me and you did these things for me. And so I felt like that argument was a perfect kind of like example of the love-hate relationship you could have with an over-controlling mother, you know, who claims to love you through all the things she's done, but nevertheless, you don't feel loved. You feel just more so like controlled or whatever, you know? And so, I mean, did you feel like you got more understanding when that scene came on,
definitely. Especially the first time that I saw it. I think I got more clarification. That being said, Marqueze, we transition into the second part of our namesake here.
Oh, wait, I'm so sorry, but there's like two quick, and I can mention them quickly, but there's at least two more things we got to mention before we end this.
Oh my gosh, we're not doing the rating scale. We got to do predictions, dude.
I know, but I'm saying even before that.
Oh no, you got okay.
I'll be quick. I'll book it. So two things. One, when you said that he's in this big auditorium, and the defense attorney is like, it sounds like it's like Beau, or like it's like Beau, whatever Beau's defense is, like doesn't have a microphone, and they're like in like almost like Roman Coliseum type looking thing, right? And so the attorney, like Beau's defense attorney, is just kind of shouting out, "Hey, blah blah blah! He didn't try to do this. You didn't listen to him when he was blah blah blah." You can kind of hear like a faint voice out in the distance, whereas the prosecuting attorney on the mom side has like a microphone. It's very clear. The whole auditorium can see him, blah, blah, blah. And so it's just kind of like, oh, Beau's voice was silenced. Voice was silenced. He didn't get the chance to defend himself. No one could even hear him. He didn't have a voice. Literally, his voice got killed, thrown over, and hit the rocks, while only the mother's prosecuting loud voice got heard in this thing. So I thought the one that was interesting, and then two, you already mentioned this, so I'll mention just real quick, of like, like as the movie ends, people like it just kind of stays on a shot of the capsized boat in the auditorium, and the credits are rolling, and people start leaving the auditorium, as while you're in the movie theater, people are leaving the movie theater.
Exactly.
And so it makes you see like, okay, so we're the audience is the first thought. And it's like, oh, so we're the audience, and we're watching, like the audience in the movie is watching Beau's mother like berate him basically, and while you're watching Beau be put on trial for all the things that he has to do. So as an audience for the movie, the whole movie are we watching? I mean, once again, all these people were kind of plants by his mom. So the whole movie, we're really watching Beau be put on trial the whole time. And this is even more particular, where there's a scene where Beau is back at the house with a couple that kind of kidnapped / adopted him, whatever, where they're at the dinner table and Beau says something, and the mom kind of like, I think she like puts writes it on a piece of paper or puts it under his coffee cup, and it says, "Don't incriminate yourself."
Yeah.
Which is important because like, and he's like, what? I don't get it. What do you mean incriminate myself? He's on trial the whole movie, the entire movie. And like when the therapist writes guilty in the beginning of the movie on like notepad, like the whole movie, Beau is on trial. And so we're watching him on trial the whole movie. Like the audience right there watched him on trial in that like 5-minute scene.
Wow. Okay, I'm glad that you stopped me, because that last little nugget, that honestly, that's definitely very interesting.
Yeah.
That's definitely very interesting.
All
Okay,
right, predictions. All right.
predictions. Marquise,
No, you, Andy, you go first.
you want me to go first?
You watch the movie twice, bro. I gotta,
Okay,
you gotta go first, and I'll just offer. I'll go off you, dog.
okay, okay. So at first, I was gonna say that, none of this was real, like, all of this was just a recounting of what Beau envisioned what his trip home was going to be, and that it was going to take place. We were going to find out that it was just Beau in the therapist's office telling him what all that kind of stuff. But when I saw it a second time, because I didn't actually believe that the therapist, like, I thought that was completely made up, that the therapist um gave, like, shared everything with the mom. I thought that was
Mhm.
completely made up. But when I watched it when I saw it the second time, and this was something I forgot to say earlier, in the therapist's office, if you notice in the background, there is what looks to be a camera with a red light blinking, like a recording light blinking in the background.
Mm.
So that one thing alone, and then also knowing that everybody was in fact a staff member by the mom, kind of like, to me, kind of discourages that sort of solution, just because that option, because I think that actually, like, could happen, um just based off of that. So I think, and I based this prediction solely on the prologue where Beau is born, as well as the final seconds of the movie. And this is how I'm basing my prediction. I think that at the very end of the movie, like I was saying when I was recounting, you hear Beau's mom screaming, very much like how you hear at the beginning of the movie Beau's mom screaming. And everything is kind of muffled in both parts of the movie. This audio is
Yep,
muffled.
yep, yep,
You
yep.
don't
I
really
remember that.
hear you don't hear what she's screaming at the beginning. You don't know what she's screaming at the end. And so I don't think there's going to be a Beau is Afraid 2. Financially, this movie is probably going to be a flop, so I don't think that A24 is going to fund Beau is Afraid
Yeah.
2. But I think realistically, this movie doesn't need a sequel. I think there's speculation on how it can continue. I think how it continues is actually when the boat flips over, you notice that the boat is shuffling. It's shuffling a lot, and obviously one can interpret that as he is drowning, he's suffocating, he's not able to make it. What if instead, what if instead Beau is making his way, because you don't see Beau when he goes underwater. What if it's actually a rebirth? Like, Beau is going through and he is like getting, like, born again. That's kind of my take, is that maybe he has all of the memories from his previous life, all of his understandings, and he has that in his new life, and can kind of take that from there and stuff like that. But that's kind of how I could see it going, because I think that there's the relationship with his mom is just so toxic. Maybe having this life to kind of understand things can help him in a new life, and how it just kind of like transitions back and forth between, like, just like screaming at the beginning, screaming at the end to start brand new. And then also water, there's like, maybe the connection with water is that there's a lot, like, life begins with water. There's, like, when people are starting civilizations, it's usually by rivers, and water is just like a huge component of life itself. So maybe it's symbolizing the end of life, Beau's like life here, and beginning again in a new life. That's honestly what I
Bro,
got.
anything counts. Anything counts for this movie, dog. To be honest, you can't get any weirder than he already did. So
there's nothing. There's no way I can get any weirder. What about you? Do you have any sort of prediction? It's totally okay if you go completely left when I went right. Or
no,
maybe you go completely right when I went left.
No, so for me, on my prediction, the last 5 minutes where Beau gets on the little like boat, little motorboat thing, and it's in the auditorium, blah blah blah. That's all in his head. That's all in his head. Because once again, he just feels like he just lost his argument with his mom again. So this is him having ran off, and then in his head, he has this whole kind of little him versus her thing where he feels like he's silenced. And then
and that's where like a lot of like the guilt comes out. The guilt kind of comes out there.
And so I feel like that's all in his head. So I feel like he instead goes back and actually kills his mom.
Ooh.
Like he choked her for a little bit in the beginning. I feel like he actually goes back. I feel like Beau actually goes back and kills his mom. And then like once he's killed her, he realizes I don't know what to do without her. Like he's hated
or maybe
her.
he does kill her. Like maybe he does kill her. Like instead of like leaving and coming back.
Or he just kills her straight there. Yeah.
Maybe he just kills her straight there. And then that's kind of what we kind of see is like his like inner thoughts of like that sort of.
And he just doesn't know what to do from that point out. And like his like life is like falling apart. He's trying to figure out what to do. He's like talking to a therapist guy, blah, 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 all this stuff, trying to figure out what to do. And then like Beau just goes into like this like weird phase, goes back to the forest orphans or whatever. I can't remember. They didn't all die, right? During that,
I don't think they all died, but I think it's implied that massive casualties.
Massive casualties. He goes back to the forest people, and then because they seem to have the most understanding of him somehow his whole life. Once again, the way these random people knew his life and predicted it, I don't know. It's Ari Aster. I need him to do it. He did like a Reddit Q&A. I need like a full-on video of him just talking, because he did it for Hereditary and Midsommar. So I need like a full-on video of him just like someone at some conferences ask him, and I need him to just explain. We need to get him on the podcast, bro. We got to get Ari Aster on the podcast, dog, because like this movie needs an explanation. It's hard for me to even do a prediction. Like I said, I think
where you're going. I'll go along with you. And I can also, I'll build off of that. I think that instead of him going back to the forest, I do think that he goes on the boat. And I think that instead of, I think what we see is what's going on in his head. But what actually happens is as he's, he doesn't know how to drive a boat. Like, when has that ever been a thing that he knows how to drive a boat? I think what actually happens in reality is that the boat gets capsizes. And I think I think the boat capsizing happens, but I don't think that like what we see actually happens. So I think that like he goes out into the water and then he hits some rough seas as he's going through this chaos and the boat capsizes.
Totally fair.
I don't think that this movie deserves a happy ending, so I don't like the whole goes to the forest and lives with them, because I think that that's too happy of an ending. But I agree. That being said, we got to do the popcorn scale. So for those of you who have made it this far, thank you so much. This is going to be probably our longest episode ever. Just like the movie. So, long movie, long podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we have a popcorn rating scale that we use to categorize movies. So a small bucket is, think of it as like a 0, 1 to 3. Like, it's not really worth your time. Don't go see it. It's not really like I said, it's not really worth it. Medium bucket, think of it as like a 4 to 6. Like, it's definitely worth the watch, but for this movie, maybe wait till it's like on Hulu, Netflix, whatever, some sort of streaming platform, and watch it there. If we give it a large bucket, think 7 to 9, like, it's definitely like, go stop what you're doing, like, go in theaters. It's definitely great. And then if we give it a big bucket, 10 out of 10, like, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care how afraid you are, how much anxiety that you have. And you have to go watch this movie. So with that being said, I have some idea of what you're going to say, Marqueze, but I'd love to know, Marqueze.
I want to see yours first. First.
I'll go first. You know what? That's fair. I think that you might be able to agree with me. I think that I think we might find some common ground here. So for me personally, as in like, just for me and where this movie ranks in terms of like my like preference for movies, I'm gonna give this one a large with extra butter. Especially after seeing it a second time. I think if I only saw it once,
A large
it'd be a medium. Like it'd be a solid medium for me. But I think seeing it a second time really really helped me. I think being able to see those extra details like really helped me appreciate this movie more and really love this movie more. And I know I said back in Tenet that a director should not make a movie with the intention of making people see it multiple times, but I don't think that that's the intention with this movie. I think Tenet was designed for you to see this movie multiple times, and I don't feel like that was the case with Beau is Afraid. I think that you get more out of it seeing it a second time, but I don't think Ari Aster is sitting here thinking I'm going to make a movie where people are going to see it over and over again. So I think that's where my distinction lands, is that the intent behind it. And so I think for me, this is a large. However, and this is where I think we'll find common ground. If I'm recommending this movie to other people, I'm dropping it down to a medium. First off, it's 3 hours. And I think that the first time you watch this movie, you feel those 3 hours.
Like 3 hours.
The second time I watched it, did not feel like 3 hours. It went by much faster. But for the general population who's probably going to see this movie once, I'm giving it a medium because only specific type of people will want to see a 3-hour movie. Only a specific type of person will want to see this specific 3-hour movie compared to like movies like Lord of the Rings and like Star Wars and other type of movies that are 3 hours long. Like there's a specific type of person that will want to see this movie. And so I'm not going to go out here and recommend to my friends who just like are not into these type of movies and give it a large, because that's like, I'm not going to waste 3 hours of somebody's time. I mean, I feel bad for wasting Susan's time having her see this movie and her absolutely hate it. So for me, this movie, when I'm recommending it to others, is probably a solid medium. If I'm comfortable with you, if I know that you're going to like it, I'll probably push you towards seeing it. But if you are not that type of person, I will give you all of the facts. I'll give you all of my opinions and let you make a decision as to whether or not you want to see it. But I think that it's a solid medium for other people. What about you, Marqueze?
So I
want to know if I'm completely wrong with finding common ground.
So I feel like I'm kind of basic. All right. For me, it's like a medium. I'm gonna give this a medium. To me personally, this was a shoot and miss, in my opinion. I agree with you that I don't think the intention was to watch this movie multiple times, like kind of Tenet. Like they assume you're going to with this. It's not. To be honest, after the first watch, I didn't want to watch it again. I still don't want to watch it again, to be honest. I'll likely watch it again, but like I do not want to particularly right now. To me, it was just kind of like he tried too much. My personal opinion, it's just kind of like he took like a really wide swing and just happened to miss. Which like he played it definitely a little bit. He played it a lot safer with Hereditary. He played it a bit safer with Midsommar. And like this is what happens when you don't play it safe. Like sometimes you might miss. And so to me, like this is just simply like he didn't play it safe, and this was a miss. That being said, I easily think this could go down as like one of the more memorable films of like recent film history, to be honest. Like I'll go that far. I think that this will get only more popular over time. Yeah, I think this is going to become more loved over time.
I think when more people are able to break down this film and provide like more
breakdowns,
more in depth
YouTube essays, like all that. Yeah. Like I think years and years to come, this is going to be a film that's going to be remembered more so than your average film. Like, I mean, and once again, I will always give props to creativity. Like this is by far incredibly creative. It's not like
The
any other
acting
movie.
was phenomenal. I feel like
Oh,
the
acting was amazing. All the
acting was
actors
great.
killed it. Acting was good. All the performances were great. Cinematography was good. Like the intensity of it. Like Ari Aster still Ari Aster. Don't get me wrong. Like this was a great overall movie. Sorry, great like performances and whatnot. But yeah, I just feel like it's a little too odd for your average viewer, and I feel like it's even a little too odd for like your like movie fanatics. Like it's really odd. It's just I think he just went a little too weird with it. I think to be honest, he should have reeled it back a little bit. But that's just me personally. I think he made it a little too off-putting for audiences, in my opinion, in my
That's
personal
fair.
opinion.
That's fair.
But I think it's gonna be legendary. Basically, I do think eventually
Yeah.
this will go down as like a top, like it'll go down top in his discography of like most unique, like, or at the very least most unique film.
I definitely agree. That being said, we would definitely love to know from you all what you all thought of Beau is Afraid. Obviously, we are a little bit split, but I think that that's okay, and I think that it's okay to come down to like only wanting to see it once. Like I said, like it's a hard movie to sit through your first time, and I would definitely love to hear y'all's thoughts on this movie, how you think this movie could have continued. There were definitely things that we didn't talk about just because this is going to be a super long episode as it is, that we would love to know more from your side on what you think. If you aren't already, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Poppin Predict and Instagram at poppinpredictions.pod. We also are going to be on YouTube, so feel free to subscribe to us there, Poppin Predictions, to let us know your thoughts, how you think this movie could continue, if you have any recommendations. That all being said, keep popping, everybody.
Peace.